Victor Frankenstein had been consumed by a singular obsession for years. His ambition to unravel the mysteries of life, to conquer death itself, had driven him to study the darkest corners of science. Deep in his laboratory, hidden away in the cold, damp recesses of an ancient castle, he worked tirelessly, day and night. Piles of anatomy books, alchemical texts, and surgical instruments cluttered his workspace, while eerie electric currents buzzed and flickered from the strange machinery he had designed. He had scoured graveyards, morgues, and execution sites for body parts, carefully stitching together a human form that was larger, stronger, and more durable than any ordinary man. His hands trembled with anticipation as he attached the final piece, the head of his creation. Its eyes were sunken, its skin stretched taut over the rough seams where the various body parts met. With a deep breath, Victor prepared the final step. He had harnessed the power of lightning, believing that electricity held the key to infusing life into his creation. As a storm brewed outside, the wind howling through the trees, he connected the wires to the creature's body, watching as the storm reached its peak. Suddenly, a blinding flash of lightning struck the equipment, sending a powerful surge of electricity coursing through the creature. The body convulsed, its limbs jerking violently as life surged into its stitched-together flesh. Victor held his breath, watching with wide-eyed anticipation. Then, slowly, the creature's eyelids fluttered open, revealing dull, lifeless eyes. It blinked, groaning softly, its chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. But what had once filled Victor with hope and ambition now turned to dread. The creature, grotesque and unnatural, slowly rose from the table, towering over its creator. Its deformed features twisted into a confused, pained expression. Victor, horrified by the sight of the monstrous being he had brought into the world, recoiled in fear. He fled the room, leaving the creature behind, alone and abandoned in the dark, cold laboratory. The creature, newly born yet fully grown, was left to fend for itself. It knew nothing of the world, nothing of its own existence. Pain and confusion weighed heavily on its mind as it staggered out of the castle, into the wilderness. For days, it wandered aimlessly, trying to understand its surroundings. But wherever it went, people recoiled in fear and horror at the sight of it. In the woods, the creature discovered it could survive on its own. It foraged for food, learned to build fires, and sought shelter in caves and abandoned huts. But loneliness gnawed at it like a festering wound. It longed for companionship, for someone to understand it, but every encounter with humans ended in terror and violence. The creature became aware of its own grotesque appearance, the scars and stitches that made it look like a patchwork of corpses. In the reflection of a still pond, it saw the monstrous face that caused others to scream and flee. The sight of its own reflection filled it with despair and rage. As time passed, the creature's loneliness turned to anger, anger at Victor Frankenstein for bringing it into a world that rejected it. It was intelligent, capable of learning and feeling deeply, but no one would ever give it the chance to prove its humanity. It was forever an outcast, a monster in the eyes of others. Determined to find Victor, the creature set out on a journey. Along the way, it encountered a poor family living in the woods, observing them from afar. The creature watched their kindness toward one another, their love and warmth, and yearned for the same. It tried to help them in secret by gathering firewood and leaving it at their doorstep, hoping they would see its good intentions. But when it finally revealed itself, hoping to be accepted, the family screamed in horror and fled. The creature's heart broke. The last shred of hope it had for kindness and connection was shattered. Fueled by anger and despair, the creature sought out Victor, determined to confront the man who had created him. It demanded that Victor create a companion for it, someone like itself who would understand its pain and share its life. But Victor, filled with guilt and fear, refused. In its rage and sorrow, the creature vowed revenge on its creator. It would destroy everything Victor loved, leaving him as broken and alone as it had been. Victor Frankenstein had thought he could escape his creation, but the monster found him. One cold night, as Victor wandered through the snow-covered mountains, wrestling with the consequences of his actions, the creature emerged from the shadows, confronting him. "You," the creature growled, its voice heavy with anger. "You made me, and now you must face the consequences of what you've done. I am alone in this world, cursed to live in misery because of you. I demand a companion, someone who will understand me, who will not run from me in fear. Create her for me, or I will destroy everything and everyone you love." Victor, though terrified by the sight of his creation, listened. A part of him felt the weight of the creature's suffering. He had brought it into the world, given it life, and yet abandoned it to endure an existence filled with rejection and pain. But to create another monster. Another being that could wreak havoc and terrorize the world. "No," Victor replied, his voice shaky but resolute. "I cannot. I will not make another like you. I have already gone too far." The creature's face twisted with rage, its monstrous features illuminated by the moonlight. "You dare deny me? After all you've done? If I cannot have a companion, I will make sure you feel the same agony I have endured. I will be with you on your wedding night, Frankenstein. I will take from you everything you hold dear." With those final, chilling words, the creature disappeared into the darkness, leaving Victor haunted by its threat. Victor returned to his family, consumed by guilt and fear. He knew the creature's warning was not an idle threat, but what could he do? His loved ones, including his beloved fiancée Elizabeth, were now in grave danger. The thought of the monster haunting him, waiting to strike at any moment, left him constantly on edge. Despite his fears, Victor could not bear to postpone his wedding to Elizabeth. He kept his plans secret, hoping to keep her safe, but deep inside, he knew the creature would come for him. On their wedding night, Victor's heart pounded with dread. After the ceremony, the couple retired to a small inn by a lake, and while Elizabeth slept peacefully, Victor armed himself, pacing through the darkened house. His mind raced, certain that the creature would come for him. Hours passed, and nothing happened. For a moment, Victor allowed himself to believe that the creature had lied, that the threat was only meant to torment him. But then, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the bedroom. Victor rushed in, his heart sinking. Elizabeth lay lifeless, her face frozen in terror, her body cold. The creature had fulfilled its promise. Victor collapsed in despair, holding Elizabeth's body in his arms. He had failed to protect her. The monster had taken away the one person he had loved most. With nothing left to live for, Victor vowed to destroy the creature he had created. His grief and rage consumed him, and he began a relentless pursuit of the monster across Europe, through forests, over mountains, and into the frozen Arctic wastes. The creature, ever aware of its creator's pursuit, left behind taunting messages, leading Victor deeper into isolation and despair. "You will never catch me, Frankenstein," the creature wrote in the snow. "But you will suffer, as I have suffered." The pursuit dragged on for months, both creator and creation bound together in a deadly game of cat and mouse. Victor's health deteriorated, and his mind teetered on the edge of madness, but he refused to give up. He was determined to rid the world of the abomination he had created, even if it meant his own destruction. As the chase reached the frozen Arctic tundra, Victor finally caught up to the creature. They stood facing each other, surrounded by icy wastelands, with nothing but the howling wind to bear witness. "I was once filled with hope," the creature said, its voice heavy with sorrow. "I wanted nothing but love and acceptance. But you denied me. Now we are both lost." Victor, weak and exhausted, raised a knife to strike at the creature, but before he could land the blow, he collapsed into the snow, his body too frail to continue. As he lay there, the creature looked down at him, its eyes filled with a strange mix of hatred and pity. "You are my creator, and yet you are as broken as I am," the creature whispered. "You have destroyed me as much as I have destroyed you." With those words, the creature turned and walked away into the freezing blizzard, disappearing into the white expanse. Victor, on the brink of death, lay alone in the snow, reflecting on the tragedy he had unleashed upon the world. Days later, a group of explorers found Victor's frozen body and took him aboard their ship. He was barely alive, but his mind was consumed by thoughts of his creation. Before he died, he told his story to the ship's captain, warning him of the dangers of unchecked ambition. He urged him to destroy the creature if it were ever found. Shortly after Victor's death, the creature appeared on the ship, standing over his creator's lifeless body. For a long time, it gazed down at him, its expression unreadable. Though it had sought vengeance, there was no triumph in the creature's eyes, only profound sorrow. "My creator is dead," the creature said softly to the captain. "I have nothing left to live for. My existence has only brought misery, to him, to those he loved, and to myself." With that, the creature turned and walked to the edge of the ship. It cast one last glance at Victor before leaping into the icy waters below, vanishing beneath the frozen waves, intending to end its tragic life.